the journalism around the Kim Mulkey story to me remains fascinating, and what Kim Mulkey did on the offensive to make sure that whatever comes out next, we're going to shrug our shoulders and say, is that all? When is that all is probably going to be a toxic work culture that allegedly that everyone can condemn unless you file it under, well, she wins. So which is your choice, Jemele? Which of those would you like?
Well, damn, Dan, I feel like you wanted me to pick sports. Fine, Dan, I'll change my mind. I'll pick sports.
No, and then Caitlin Clark. And then Caitlin Clark.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Let's do it. Let's go sports. Well, listen, I mean, it was, as you mentioned, a lot going on in these last couple of days. And I guess I'll just start with the last thing you mentioned, Kim Mulkey, for example. And this is unfortunately a part of the culture that we're in right now. You know, every day there's a fight to do good journalism. And I feel like that fight has been lost. You know, I hate to sound very pessimistic, as I often I find myself being these days, but Kim Mulkey played from a playbook that has worked. It worked for the former president of the United States as well. Once you label the news media the enemy of the state, and once you are able to get people distracted from whatever is the information to come, listen, Kent Babb, who is supposedly the journalist who is working on the story, he should be very happy. I don't know if the Washington Post was planning to put the story behind a paywall, but put one down by it now, because now we're all interested. Kim Mulkey basically drew attention to a fire we didn't even know was happening. And a lot of people look at this as a strategy to get out front. I think it was a bad strategy, because we're more interested than ever in this story. And not to mention, even though she said afterwards that, you know, her team wasn't distracted. I mean, LSU didn't, despite the final score, they didn't play particularly well. I'm not saying that these two things are related, but we get on players all the time and use the word distraction to include everything under the sun. And here you have the coach kind of doing the same thing. Listen, journalism has lost the overall fight. I mean, misinformation and disinformation is here. And now if you just label everything to be fake or label everything to be true, whether you've seen the evidence or not, that is enough of a seed that is planted in people's mind to already have an opinion about something that they haven't seen. Investigative journalism is hard work. It's practically dead in our industry because it's costly, because there's only a limited number of people who can do it. And then, you know, on top of that, it creates a level of backlash that a lot of news organizations are no longer comfortable accepting. But do know this, the Washington Post has been at this a very long time. And Kim Mulkey can threatening the paper that brought us Watergate, that took down Richard Nixon, is laughable and amusing in itself. I mean, a lot of how Kim Mulkey has behaved has been excused, I think. I mean, I think she's gotten a pretty golden pass when you look at the totality of the things that she said and done. And some of that has to do that we're still in this phase right now with women's sports, and especially with women's basketball as it's exploding before our very eyes, that there is a protectiveness that is put over this sport because it has been unfairly treated by the NCAA. News media organizations have not put a lot of resources into covering women's sports. So what you do get sometimes is this need to not just protect it, but to cheerlead for it. And because of that, a lot of the things and toxic traits that we've seen in male sports for a long, long time, they exist on the women's side as well. And they go undercover because, frankly, they haven't, a lot of what has been covered in women's sports has not been covered with the same level of scrutiny and to the degree that men's sports have. And so Kim Mulkey has, frankly, gotten a pretty big pass given her level of success. This is not unique in the sense that we've seen very powerful coaches who are able to win and bring championships. They are allowed to behave as they want to behave as long as they're winning. So I'm very curious. I mean, this could be anything from Kim Mulkey cut somebody off in traffic to massive NCAA violations, to traffic, to toxic culture, as you mentioned. I have no idea, but I know that I'm interested now. But I hate it for our profession that this is once again shedding a light on what is the state of journalism at this moment. I mean, you named off a lot of things. Gambling. All right, let's do gambling next. I'm currently working on a piece about that for the
hold on. We've got. I want to get all of this with you, but I have some journalism questions as well.
Okay.
But you hijacked the show.
Okay, my bad.
Right. Stop.
She deserves to hijack the show.
Stop that gambling conversation. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
It would be
My
great
bad.
if this whole thing was over like a traffic violation or she cut someone off, right?
Yeah.
She's just like so upset that they've like interviewed so many people about it.
Remember, Dan, you're implicated in normalizing sports betting across this state.
Somebody writes in here, is Dan going to be mad at everyone again for not being surprised Kim Mulkey is a POS? Everyone knows. Nobody cares because she wins. Literally the story of every POS sports person ever.
I know what POS means. I don't think Billy knows what POS means. Can you elaborate?
Thank you. Piece of shit.
Oh,
Piece of shit is everyone knows this, but she wins. Well,
I watch Bar Rescue. It means something different.
Have some integris.
Point of service system, yeah, touchscreen.
Jamel,
You got 7 free ones.
I've got it on a loop in my house. I can't stop watching him. He just keeps
Oh,
yelling at the people.
it's one of my 5 favorite shows on TV. Like, in a bucket list of things that I want to do, that I want to accomplish, and however long I have left on this magical earth, I want to be on the recon team for Bar Rescue. I want the shitty beer. I want the food that will probably make me sick and throw up all night. John Tafford, if you're listening, recruit me for the recon team.
This is great. I got something to run by you. What's your opinion on bigger balls? Hell yeah. In the NBA, to restrict people from shooting outside, having balls that are just slightly bigger.
Because my bag is early in the morning. I was like, what?
Well, it'll legislate shots from downtown on its own if you naturally have a ball that's maybe just increased by like a centimeter.
Can I explain to Jemele that we want a new advertising campaign for basketball that fixes everything, not the games, but the images and the scoring and the problems. And we're saying be hedonistic, bigger balls.
fix games.
Fix games.
Limit threes.
6 games. Okay. All righty. Well, that took a turn, as they say. I was not prepared to have an opinion about bigger balls, but I'll lean into you all's expertise, because clearly you've thought about this much longer than I have.
Good. She wants only areas.
These aren't ornaments. These serve a purpose.
Areas of expertise, because
Wow.
I want to get into the thicket, Jemele, so to speak, of the specifics of how this story comes to be, because you say investigative work, but this is an enterprise reporter. This is not 2 years of reporting. This is somebody who's wanted to do this story for 2 years, but hasn't been working exclusively on it. We've been trying to get the writer on because I want to understand a little more what Kim Mulkey just did, what the strategy of it was in today's America, where the playbook for the strategy of what's going to be reported here by an enterprise reporter. Right now, Kim Mulkey knows, because the questions told her. She knows. We don't know. And everything she did the other day was preemptive. It was strategic. It had more thoughts in it as a defense than anything Ohtani did. And what she does by neutering it before it gets started is the reporting has to be so vigorous on, are you going to accuse this person of toxic workplace culture, of being cruel and demeaning to human beings? Are you going to accuse her of that? And she can ward it off by saying, well, it's just embellishments. I'm telling you on the front end, this is a hit piece, when it's not that. That I can assure you of, that it's not gratuitously something meant to harm her. It was somebody who went to report that story, a feature on her life, and then came upon a bunch of things that are probably going to be really uncomfortable about what her workplace is. That's what I would guess.
Well, and people have to understand this too, is that when you have fascinating figures in sports, and Dan, when you were at the Miami Herald, you did this many, many times, is that you seek as a journalist to understand why they're so successful. Why have they been able to create the winning and the championships and all the things that she's been able to create? So the natural curiosity should be there in explaining who this woman is and how she's risen to power. Now, lately, and certainly beyond the championships, the reason that Kim Mulkey often is in the news is not usually the best reason. It's not usually the best publicity for her or for her program or for the school. I mean, when you look at the whole season that LSU has had, look at where it started. It started with Angel Reese mysteriously being gone, there being some hints of some kind of discord or some kind of problem happening within the team. We know about Kim Mulkey's very frosty attitude toward Brittany Griner, particularly when she was being detained in Russia. There have been all these elements and all these, pieces that have been leading us up to who is this woman And how is it that she came to be this way? So that is a very natural question for any journalist to ask. And this particular journalist is considered to be one of the best. And typically what we shouldn't do when we walk into these situations is write the story in our head or in our mind before we actually do some reporting. And it's possible it is just what you said, that he started reporting on this story to try to explain this towering figure in women's basketball and came upon something that she clearly finds distasteful based off the questions that she had been asked. Now, as you know, covering sports as long as you have, Dan, and I see my man Greg sitting next to you, and I'm sure he could chime in on this as well, is that a lot of times these people in sports who are in these positions don't want to be questioned. They don't want anything beyond the narrative that they try to set. And when you come upon or you're able to report and explain a different narrative than what they presented, they get very, very mad about this. So the reaction is not new. It's something that we've seen virtually with anybody who has any prominence in sports.